Welcome to part 3 of the MLS season previews. And on today, Valentine's Day here in the United States, you know we had to go with my love, DC United. We're also going to take Chicago and the two LA teams, LA Galaxy and LAFC. We're going to get straight into things so you guys don't miss a thing. Here we go. All right, so first and foremost, we are going to get into my team, DC United. A lot of moves that we made in the last few weeks here, so I'm glad I waited to do this a little bit later on. I've been trying to wait as long as possible to try to get as many of these roster moves in so that I can get you guys an accurate preview. And I think we've got a pretty decent idea of where this team is at this point. There's a couple of guys that might surprise you that they're not starting in my lineup, but we're going to get straight into things. So the transfers in: Brad Smith from Seattle, Michael Estrada, and Taxi Fountas. The transfers out: Kevin Paredes heads over to Wolfsburg, Paul Arriola is gone, Yordi Reyna is gone, Joseph Moore is gone, and Felipe is gone. Key youngster is a guy that if you had asked me at the beginning of last season, I would have said was better than Kevin Paredes. He didn't have a great season last year, but Kevin Paredes had a massive season, and so Kevin gets the big move. Moses Nyman is likely to be next. He's got the same level of talent, if not maybe a little more, plays defensive mid. They are not going to retain Junior Moreno, it looks like, so they're going to open up that spot for Moses Nyman. There's really no one else who can take that spot, so it is a big year for Moses Nyman. I'm going to be invested in him pretty heavily here as we move forward. Biggest loser is going to be Ola Kamara. He doesn't make the starting 11 despite tying for the Golden Boot last year. A lot of you guys know that I'm not super high on Ola Kamara. Had a lot of penalty goals last year, and he just kind of was in the right spot in the box as his teammates kind of created for him. I think that really that system and the team around them were creating all the chances, and I think if you put just about anybody in there, I think they're going to do pretty well, which is why I'm very high on the two strikers that we brought in, especially Taxi. I think Taxi could have a monster year. Maybe not this year because it does normally take a year to get integrated into MLS, but going into next year, he will be one of my huge buy now candidates. I mean, obviously depending on what we see this year, but best 11 is fairly easy. There's a couple tough choices to make. DC will play with a back five, so the three center backs, and there are really four good center backs, but the three center backs we're going with: Birnbaum, Heinzike, and Andy Nahar. On the right is Gressel, on the left is Brad Smith. Those guys are nailed on. They're not going anywhere. There's really no backups for them if they get hurt. Nyman and Knaus are the midfielders. Again, not really any backups there. We'll take a look at the full roster here in a second. And then up top, we're going to go with Flores underneath Estrada and Taxi. So they're going to play like a 3-5-2 in this scenario. And I'm really excited to see this team, especially Flores. He has been on fire for the preseason so far. Scored for Peru, I believe, as well in a World Cup qualifier. So if he really gets going, that's a big step for DC United to get that creative playmaker they haven't had since Luciano Acosta left. So that's a big deal if they can get Flores going. Flipping over to the full roster now, we can take a look. John Kempen is re-signed. They don't love him as a backup goalkeeper. They're still looking to add kind of the backup and have John be the third goalkeeper. But Bill is the nailed-on starter here. Donovan Pines is really the big loser, as well as Ola Kamara. There's four good center backs: Pines, Birnbaum, Heinzike, and Andy Nahar. Nahar could slide out to right back, and they could push Gressel higher up, but I don't think that really makes a whole lot of sense for this team. They've now got some options going forward, so I think it's going to be Pines probably coming off the bench. It's probably Pines versus Birnbaum, maybe, but Birnbaum was the captain of this team for a while. Hamid's been the captain as well, so I just can't see them sitting those guys. Pines will get a ton of time. He's kind of a unicorn. He's 6'6" and can run, so he brings something completely different that none of the other center backs do. Birnbaum and Heinzike are kind of the two similar center backs. Antonio Alfaro had a fairly big role on the team last year. Looks like he'll be just kind of a backup, maybe filling in for Brad Smith at times. But as long as hopefully everybody stays healthy, hopefully he shouldn't have a huge role on this team. They do have Junior Moreno listed on the roster. Last I heard, he was not going to be renewed. They're still kind of loosely in talks, apparently, but it looks like it's going to be Nyman and Knaus. Skundrich would be the next guy up in the center of that midfield, but it's really those two guys. So if anything were to happen to one of those two guys, I don't know what they would do. I mean, they would start Skundrich but I don't know who they would bring in off the bench. And then Gressel will play the right wing back, the right wing back, and Brad Smith, who's way up here, will play the left wing back. So both of those guys are going to get forward a lot. Smith, that's really what he's good at, so I think this is actually a huge upgrade for Brad Smith. He could be kind of a nice sleeper pick to get a few assists this year, get on the score sheet a little bit. I think this style really fits what he's really good at. In the front three, Flores he's a natural 10, so I'd like to see them play him underneath the two strikers. And the strikers could be Kamara. The strikers could be Taxi, who should be coming in. He might miss the first game, but he should be coming in at the end of February, so I don't believe he's coming in over the summer. And then they also have Nigel Robertha, who I'm also very, very high on. There are still trade rumors as well going on for Ola Kamara, so just keep that in mind. Next up on the list, we have DC's old rival, an original MLS team as well, Chicago Fire. And this team has been a dumpster fire in the past few years, pun intended. They got a few nice pieces in, but I still think this team has lost way too much. They weren't any good last year to begin with, and I just can't see how this gets better. They have some pieces now, but they just have no depth whatsoever. So if any injuries happen, they are in big trouble. Transfers in, the big one is Shaqiri here. Navarro came in last year. Shabilko and Chicos. I like all three of these moves from Chicago, just not enough in my opinion. There's not enough guys coming in for all the guys they lost. Frankowski, Madron, Calvo, Stojanovic, Nacho Aliceta, Baric, Shuttleworth, Kronholm. Just a ton of guys out the door, and key contributors at that. So I don't think they can replace that level of production with the guys that they have in house. One of the few bright spots last year was Gaga Slonina. Obviously, he's getting some transfer rumors from Europe as well, so keep an eye on that as we head into the summer. He may end up at Juventus. He may end up with another big team. That would kind of wreck his value a little bit, so just be cautious if you're going to go for Gaga Slonina. If you are going to go for Slonina, I like the pairing with Chicos. So the biggest loser on this team, I think, is Chinoso 04. He was in line to get a pretty decent chunk of game time here, and then they've just brought in Shaqiri and Shabilko in the last few weeks, and Chinoso 04 probably gets relegated to the bench. Another guy that he's kind of going to fight with is Ivanov. I really like Ivanov as a player. I hope that they can find some way to put him in the starting lineup, but Ivanov really does get hurt by the Shaqiri move and the Shabilko move as well. So we're going to go through the best 11 really quickly. So obviously Gaga Slonina, the best keeper they have. Chicos and Pineda are the two center backs. Navarro and Sekulic are the fullbacks. Navarro and Jimenez will hold as the midfielders. And then the front four, I think this is a 4-2-3-1, will be Hebers, Shaqiri, possibly Ivanov, possibly 04. I think this position may rotate a little bit. I don't really see a clear starter, but I think Ivanov is going to just take this position, and then Shabilko is going to play up top. Looking at Chicago's full roster, obviously Gaga Slonina is the big name here. Chicos, I love that move. Pineda is there. He's a really low-key guy too. Very young guy, has been in the U.S. national team, just 24 years old, had a decent season last year. So these center backs and goalkeeper are actually pretty good. We have Miguel Navarro at left back. We have Sekulic at right back. Outside of that, there's really nobody in the back that really stands out to me. Maybe Espinosa, who they got for a little bit of money, but there's not really anybody else. I mean, Wyatt Omsberg has been rotational at best. He's their third center back. In the midfield, you have Federico Navarro, you have Gaston Jimenez. Those are two nice players. Navarro will have to fit in as he's brand new to the MLS, so just keep an eye on that. None of these guys really are worth too much. And then obviously Shaqiri, the big move. Hey, Bears can play a little bit of everywhere, so he'll kind of slot in wherever they need. Ivanov is a decent player. Shabilko is decent. Duran maybe could cause some issues. He could maybe get in there and take a few minutes. And then Chinoso 04 as well is a talented youngster. Duran just maybe a little too young for me to love this year. Possibly going forward, we'll see how he kind of pans out. Next up, we have LAFC. So they had a massive transfer window. Ton of guys in, ton of guys out. It'll be a huge turnover. They lose Bob Bradley, so a new coach, Chirondolo, is going to come in. We'll have to see how he does. He was kind of inconclusive in his first year as a head coach in the USL. So this will be a really interesting year. LAFC has a ton of talent, but there's a real question of can they put all this together and be an actual team. They have a ton of good individuals. Can they play together as a team? So transfers in. Kellen Acosta, big signing. Max Grupo, big signing. Tajuri Shradi, nice depth signing. Ilie Sanchez, really underrated player. Franco Escobar's a good player. And Hollingshead's one of the better left backs in the league as well. I don't even know if he starts on this team, to be honest with you. Transfers out are some big ones too. Atuesta's gone. Cisniega, the keeper, is gone. Raheem Edwards is gone. Blackman was a decent player. And Amarco Farfan is gone as well. Key youngsters, Brian Rodriguez, he's a star. Everybody knows who he is, but he is still very young, so keep an eye on him. If he and Vela and Chico Arango can really start to work together, that front three could be really, really, really dangerous. Biggest loser, there's a few guys that could be biggest loser here. Hollingshead is definitely one. Latif Blessing, I think, is the guy, just because he was on the team last year, and I don't see how they can make Latif a starter. Latif is one of my favorite players. I would find a spot for him somewhere, and I have a feeling he's going to rotate in a bunch of different positions. He's got a ton of flexibility. He could play the number 9, and he could also be a fullback. He could play literally anywhere on the field. If there's an injury, I think Latif is going to get some time. But as of right now, when you talk about the best 11, I don't know that Latif Blessing is in there. So here we go, best 11, Maxi Grupo. We have Segura once he comes back. Until he comes back, it'll be Fall in there. Murillo, Palacios, Escobar, Acosta, Ilie Sanchez, and Cifuentes are the midfield three. And then Vela, Brian Rodriguez, and Chico Arango are up top. Now we're going to take a look at the full roster. This is why I say they have so much depth. McCarthy is a decent keeper. He's going to be the backup to Grupo. And Mbake Fall is really, really good as well. They have Murillo. They have Segura. Palacios is good. Hollingshead, I don't think, is a starter. I think Palacios is the starter there. And Hollingshead's one of the better left backs in the league. Kim Moon-Wan was another candidate for biggest loser. I think he's really good, but Franco Escobar is now here, so I don't think he can play right back. In the midfield, Kellen Acosta, Ilie Sanchez, Cifuentes, and Blessing are all four going to rotate pretty evenly among those three spots. Latif can go and play other positions as well, but they've got cover at just about every position, so it's really insane how much talent these guys have. Vela, obviously everybody knows Carlos Vela. Brian Rodriguez is a star. He's only 21 years old. Christian Arango is also very, very good. They got Tajuri Shradi as depth. They got Danny Musovski as depth. They've got Kwadu Opoku, who I'm really high on, as depth. This is a loaded team. It just depends on, can Steve Cherundolo get these guys to play together. Finally, we're going to go across town to the LA Galaxy. Another big transfer window. Second year under Greg Vanney. They just missed out on a playoff spot last year, and they've got the talent to make a real push for the playoffs and be a very dangerous team this year. Transfers in, really underrated one, getting Marky Delgado. Kelvin Leardam provides some depth. Raheem Edwards comes across town from LAFC. Douglas Costa is the big signing here recently. Transfers out, Sebastian Lletget, also an underrated transfer going out. They lose DeSantos, who wasn't doing a whole lot for them, and then O'Neal Fisher, kind of that cover. He's kind of replaced by Leardam anyway. Key youngster, there's a couple of really good youngsters on this team. Efren Alvarez is probably the bigger one, but Araujo is also fantastic at that fullback spot. Biggest loser from the Costa signing specifically is probably Samuel Granser. I expected a decent season out of him. Thought he was going to be pretty good. Now it does not look like he is going to be in the starting lineup. So best 11 will be Jonathan Bond as the goalkeeper. We'll have Williams and Depay in the back. We'll have Villafana and Araujo as the fullbacks. Delgado and Ravelson will hold. Cabral, Costa, Alvarez, and Chicharito are who I'm going with for the front four. They really have 6 fantastic front four players, though. So I don't know. I mean, maybe there's some rotation. I really can't get a good hold on who's going to actually play and contribute on this team. But these guys are just so good. Maybe Douglas Costa doesn't even make it. Maybe he is really just a super sub. I just kind of assume with the pedigree that he comes in that he's going to want to play. So as it stands, I don't think you can bench Alvarez. Cabral is probably the best of the 3 younger guys. And then you got Chicharito, who I think is going to play until he is injured. Galaxy are definitely a team with some depth as well. We've got Jonathan Klinsmann, who's a pretty good player. I don't love the center backs here. Koulibaly is okay. he will probably rotate in at times. Villafana is really not someone I would love to have as my left back, but he is kind of the only left back there. Leerdam's a pretty good right back, but Araujo is not giving up that spot anytime soon. Victor Vasquez has had a long storied career. He will be there for good leadership. I don't know that he produces too much on the field. Revolution is a solid defensive midfielder, and he'll slot in, I would assume, next to Marky Delgado. And then I think you kind of take your pick of the guys going forward. Efra Alvarez, we've already talked about. He's phenomenal. Kevin Cabral is probably the starter as one of the wingers. Costa is definitely going to play. They've paid enough for him. You would expect Chicharito to play as well. But, I mean, Joveljic is so good. Grancer is so good. Raheem Edwards is pretty good, too. Not a bad third option to be coming in off the bench. And then they got some veterans, Sasha Kleshchin. We've got Victor Vasquez up here. So some good, decent depth up top. I don't know that I love the defense on this team. I think they may ship some goals, but they should be able to score some goals as well. That is it for me for today. Have a happy Valentine's Day. And until the next time, Vamos United.